My name is Christine Woody, and I am the Food Security Coalition Coordinator for Empower Missouri. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our skill building piece. We're going to talk on how to build a relationship with your lawmaker and how to stay in touch with them after that initial conversation that you have. And then Amber Smith is my co-presenter today, and I'm going to give her just a minute to introduce herself before I jump into my presentation. So Amber, go ahead.
Thanks, Christine. Hi, guys. Like Christine said, my name is Amber Smith, and I'm the Affordable Housing Policy Manager with Empower Missouri. And I live and work in the Lake of the Ozarks area. So if any of you are from that area or have questions about that area, you can get a hold of me via email, and that is on our website. And I lead the Affordable Housing Coalition, like I said, but we'll talk a little bit more about that here shortly.
Wonderful. Thanks, Amber. All right, Naishal, if you want to go to the next slide. So as I said, we've started each one of these virtual week of action days with a small skill building session, and I'm going to lead us through our skill building session for today. And it's really how to stay in touch with your lawmaker. If you want to go to the next slide. So you start out by having that first initial contact, right? And kind of what's next? What do you do and how do you build on that first initial outreach to your legislator? It's all about relationships, right? So legislative advocacy is really all about relationships and keeping that relationship going and building that trust between you as an advocate and your legislator. I say that all the time. The most successful advocates that I know are the folks who know their legislator, that they trust, the legislator trusts them, that they think of them when they think of the issue that they're passionate about, right? The legislator is more likely to take your call, to answer your email, to take your advice if they know who you are. That's why building a relationship with your legislator is so important. Lawmakers say this to me all the time, that sometimes it only takes one constituent or one person or one advocate who they know to help them change their position or educate them on an issue. And each one of us can be that person for a legislator that we know. So of course, there's that first contact. If you want to move on to the next slide, Naishal. And this first contact that you have with a legislator, many times it's your legislator, the legislator that is from your district, or if you work for an organization, maybe it's the legislator for where your organization is. That's also a great relationship to build up. So that first initial contact that you have with your legislator, it's super important to not only just introduce yourself and share the information with them about the piece of legislation that you are caring about. But it's also a great way to explain why you're there, explain some data, share some stories. But to help solidify that relationship, I always find it super important to really make a point of connection between you and your legislator. Legislators are from your area, right? So it should be rather simple to find some sort of connection with them. So either it's you live in the same neighborhood, you go to the same church, your children go to the same school. Even if you're talking to your legislator from your organization, just the sheer fact that the organization that you work at is in their district, that's a commonality and a connection that you can highlight that will help them solidify that relationship and remember you. And kind of just a point of that, making that personal connection, it's maybe obvious to say, but this may not be the best time to share negative opinions of your legislator or talk negatively about votes that they have done. This is really not the time to do a political exchange, to talk about politics. It's really about building up that relationship and setting a foundation, which will then be helpful further down the line. And so, of course, that's that first initial meeting, and that's important. But next, I think what's even more important than that first initial meeting, it's really what you do next. It's the follow-up that you do from that initial meeting that's going to solidify the relationship that you have. I always recommend, after you have reached out to a legislator and said who you are and asked them to vote yes or no on a piece of legislation, you need to write them a thank you note. I mean, sending an email is fine, but I truly believe a handwritten note that you mail to their office is going to make a bigger impact on the legislator than anything else that you can do. This not only is a oh, wow, that's nice that they took an extra minute to write a little thank you note, but it will remind them of who you are. It will remind you of their connection. It will give them a reminder of the issue that you care about. Just that second pass of what you initially talked to them about is a great way for them to remember you further down the line. And all of that's pretty simple, right? So doing that first meeting and doing a follow-up, that's great. But after that, what's just as important is to really follow up and to track what happens next, right? So you can say, oh yes, I want you to vote for this, but if you never follow through with if they actually voted for it or what happened with the bill, it's gonna just move on and everyone's gonna forget about what happened previously. So you need to keep track of the bill or track of the issue that you are working on, and then follow back up with them after they've either voted for it or against it. Check and see how they voted, and then follow back up with them. You should follow back up with them at that time, because this lets them know that you really do care about the issue that you're passionate about. It's not just a form email or a quick, happenstance that this is happening. If you really track that bill and follow up with them after the vote, that's just another way to let them know that you really are concerned and passionate and understand this issue. And so if they voted the way that you wanted them to vote, this is a great time to thank them. If they did not vote the way that you wanted them to vote, you can tell them that in a respectful way, and then reiterate why you were hoping that they would vote a different way. You can do that in a very respectful way, in a way that will continue to educate them for potentially voting a different way next time. So all of those things are great ways to stay in touch and to make that connection with your legislator during legislative session, right? So legislative session takes place from January to May in Jefferson City every year. And that is the time when those bills, specific bill numbers, are kind of in their head, right? But that is also the time of the year that is the most busy for legislators. Lobbyists, other legislators, visitors, school children, they are in and out of that office all day, every day. Legislators are running from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. If you go down to the Capitol and you get like 2 minutes with a legislator, that's pretty gosh darn good. They are super busy. So they do not have much time to really spend with people, just because there's hearings and debate on the floor and meetings and many things happening. Legislators are normally only in session from Monday through Thursday. So Fridays is usually an off day. So that is a day that they are back in their districts. So that could be a time that you catch them, that they may have a little bit more time. But additionally, legislators in Missouri, this is a part-time job. So a lot of them do have other jobs that they do. So during session, it is very difficult to get in touch with them. After May, this is the prime time to really meet with your legislator in their district and develop that relationship that can then lead to more impact during the next year's legislative session. So this year, legislative session ends on May 13th, so just over a month from now. And at that time, they're back in their home districts. They're much freer to meet with you, much freer to meet with lots of constituents and local organizations. And this is the time that you can do that more deep dive relationship building. So I always say, if you work for a nonprofit or an agency that's in their district, this is a great time to invite them to come to your organization and let them tour it. You can talk about the work that you do, talk about the clients that you have, and then lead that into talking about these issues that you care about and how they are truly affecting your clients or who you are working with. An agency tour is a win-win situation for you and them. So it's a photo op for the legislator, right? They could get in and they can take pictures with your sign and they can post it on Facebook. But it's also a great way for you to talk about not only your organization, but those issues that you're hoping to advocate on when they're in Jefferson City. So as an organization that does a lot of policy and advocacy work, we want to offer that we are more than happy to assist you in maybe setting up some of those agency tours. We're always happy to come to those meetings to talk some more like deep dive into some of the policy issues around one of the issues that we're working on if it relates to your organization. And we've done a lot of these kind of agency tours in the past. So that's one way that we can maybe offer to help you get a little bit more connected to some of the legislators that you work with. But if you don't work for an organization, this is also a way during this time that you can just get to know them as a constituent. So you can just invite your legislator to meet you for coffee at a local coffee house. As I said, they're less busy during this time and they want to outreach to their local constituents. So they're very willing to meet with you in just a local coffee shop in your neighborhood, just to get to know you, get to know what you do, get to know what organizations that you are passionate about or what issues you care about. And it's this time that you can really educate them and you can solidify that relationship. So even if you don't work for an agency, feel free to reach out to them and ask them to meet you for coffee at some point. Additionally, in more of a kind of a non-one-on-one sort of a setting, legislators during that off-session time are always doing town halls and community meetings. And this is another great time that you can just attend that as like an audience member, but you can ask them questions or you can catch them after that meeting and just spend a few minutes introducing yourself and talking about who you are and talking about the issues that you care about. So keep in mind, if you join like their newsletter or following them on social media, those sorts of meetings they put out all the time. So that is a really great way to kind of see where they are and what they're doing, and you can kind of follow them that way. So once that relationship is really established, this is the prime opportunity to have be able to influence them and educate them and potentially help them vote in a better way, in a way that you feel should be the way they vote on. It's those that they trust are the ones that are going to have their ear. A lot of times it's lobbyists, a lot of times it's other legislators who are in their own party, but it also can be constituents. It can be someone that they personally know and personally trust and personally have a relationship with. And that's what we as advocates can provide. Legislators cannot know everything about every issue. Even the most brilliant legislator in the world cannot know everything that's going on in the legislature. And so you as an advocate, even if you don't feel 100% comfortable knowing everything about your issue, you guaranteed know more than they do about it. And so they are wanting to know and they're willing to listen to you and talk to you about that. And so the only other thing that I would say about this building relationship, if I would be remiss if I did not mention, Missouri does have term limits. So you only have 8 years as a state rep and 8 years as a senator, meaning there's always turnover. There's always new legislators to build relationships with. So if you know someone and you don't agree with them, or you've tried to build that relationship and it's not working, realize that someone new is going to be in, and you can start this process all over with the new person once they get elected again. So it's just a process, and it truly is just building that relationship and reaching out to them and sharing your knowledge and your passion and your experience where you can become a more impactful advocate. Anyone have any questions about just kind of building that relationship? Like I said, if you are interested in inviting some legislators to your agency, please do reach out. We are happy to help kind of foster that relationship and set up those sorts of meetings. And then other than that, if I have no other questions, I will pass it to Amber to talk about the Affordable Housing Coalition.
Hello, thank you, Nichelle. So I wanted to start off by discussing the Affordable Housing Coalition that I am a part of and that we host meetings about regularly. So Nichelle, if you go to the next slide. Beautiful. So the Affordable Housing Coalition really seeks to answer the question, what will it take for everybody in Missouri, every citizen in Missouri to have access to safe and affordable housing? And we've realized ourselves that we don't know best. So one of the things that we want to do is bring together those who do direct service work and those who are very knowledgeable in the affordable housing business, whether it be with their own personal business or even a nonprofit organization, and discuss how we can help really on a legislative level, at a policy level. So our meetings during the legislative session, like Christine said, from January to May are twice a month. And then at a legislative session, we meet once a month. And you'll see on the slide there, and then also on our website when our meetings are. So if you're interested in joining those, I would love to have you, and I would love to chat more with you about affordable housing in your area and how we can, together make the most impactful statement to those in our community who do need our assistance. Our next meeting is the 11th at 2 o'clock. They typically run for an hour. So if you have time, like I said, we would love to have you. And then Michelle, if you will go to the, perfect, go to the next slide. So Christine discussed our skill building section for the today. And then what I'm going to be discussing is something called a land bank. But before I do that, I do want to talk just about affordable housing in general and the struggle that a lot of Missourians in our state are having. So there's a lot of statistics that you guys can see on your screen here on this slide, but what does it mean? So what this means, the summary of all of this is that there are 122,000 households in our communities that are working full-time minimum wage jobs, and they cannot find housing that they can afford on those wages, working 40 or 40 plus hours a week. And what's curious is I think a lot of people see in their own communities houses for sale. They see rental signs. They see multiple places that people are just not living in. And one of the struggles that we're seeing, especially with those in these communities who are in these lower incomes, is that they're already struggling. So not only are they not able to afford a reasonable rent, they're struggling with utilities that are included in that. They're struggling with even just trying to break minimum. So a lot of these properties for these people are out of reach. Michelle, if you will go to the next slide, beautiful. Okay, so these numbers come from a report that was put out by an organization called NLICH. And if you'll notice at the top there, these numbers are from 2019. So what this means is that these numbers are pre-pandemic. So for a lot of our neighbors and for a lot of the people that we work with in our communities, both rural and urban, the pandemic has made their situation worse. So I see this in my community that I live in, and I know that you guys probably see this in the community that you live in as well. So what's happening is the people that are in the super low income brackets are having to choose between paying a utility bill that could already be late, or food and prescriptions. Thank you, Christine. Yep, she just added a link there in the chat to NLICH. They have a bunch of really, really good resources if you guys are interested in affordable housing. So what I want you guys to think about is think about where you're from. Are you from a rural area like me? Are you from St. Louis or Kansas City like a number of the people at Empower are? Do you live in a mid-sized city like Columbia? When you drive around, when you walk around your city or your town or your rural area, what does it look like? So I know for me specifically, one of the things that we struggle with here at the lake is we have a lot of abandoned property, a lot of abandoned homes that are either unused or people can't afford them, so they go elsewhere. And so we're stuck with a lot of these properties that go unused. So Michelle, if you will go to the next slide. So one of the solutions, one of the proposed solutions to the affordable housing crisis that Missourians are struggling with is something called a land bank. So a land bank is essentially a government entity that allows the community to take over an abandoned property, a vacant property, or even a derelict property, and turn it into usable community space. And really the purpose and the goal behind these is to stabilize and redevelop tracts of land in your individual community that have otherwise been forgotten about, to turn them into low-income housing stock. You can turn them into a home for a first-time homeowner. They can also be sold, and a lot of people do this with a number of different lots. They'll sell them all as one and turn them into an affordable housing apartment building or a series of buildings that can become more useful later on. One of the cool things that I know a lot of land banks are doing is they will buy a property and hold it. So especially in a community that, say, is quote unquote up and coming, that is potentially struggling with gentrification, they'll be able to hold this property until the community decides what they want to do with it, or what what it would be, what would be more beneficial for them in the long run. So it allows them a little bit of time and space to make those choices and make those decisions. And then Michelle, if you will go to the next slide there. So I wanted to include this slide because I'm more of a visual person, and I really like to kind of see how a process works. So if you'll notice, like I said, the land bank is a thing, but it's also a process. So basically, what's happening is you are moving an unused property from private ownership, maybe because the taxes haven't been paid for whatever reason, to public ownership. And at that point, the land bank takes ownership, and they are able to take care of all the back taxes, for example. They're able to take that and turn it back into private ownership, which is what we talked a little bit about before with the affordable housing apartments, or just keeping the space open for use later on down the road. Okay, so Nichelle, if you will click to the next slide, thank you. So why a land bank? I think, in Missouri, we're all seeing the struggle that a lot of people are having. And really the utilization of these allows for a property that's not being used, and to turn them into something that a community can take pride in. And the interesting thing is if a land bank is not in use, the property is just sitting. So it's not doing anything. And that can attract all kinds of issues, whether it be unsightly, or it could be one of the situations that people live in it when they don't have anywhere else to go, which can be a really dangerous situation if the house is not safe. And for us, what we believe, what we think is that this, and really what the data shows us, is this is a way to help our most vulnerable neighbors. This is a way to help those that are really struggling to find a house that they can afford, or a space that they can afford. And for us, what the data shows us is that rehabbing a space is often more cost effective than a new build, for example. So we think that this is a way for us and for communities in Missouri to put a dent in the number of affordable housing units that are available in this state, and that this is really not an end-all be-all solution. I wish there was. I think what's going to end up having to happen is this will become a tool in a community's toolbox, a tool for us to help those who are the most vulnerable, to really get into a space that they can call their own and that a community can be proud of. All right. So one of the bills that's in the legislature now is called HB 2177. And one of the things that we're going to be asking you guys to do today is to call, meet, or call or email today your senator or representative and tell them to advance any bills regarding land banks, specifically the HB 2177. Now you can meet with your senator, but like Christine said, we are already at the beginning of April. So they are going to be very busy. So I would recommend calling or emailing your senator to discuss land banks. And really the whole purpose, the whole reason we would like you guys to do this is going to allow a town or a city of less than 80,000 to start a land bank without having to file a bill to do so. So before you had to go through a lengthy process, this would just take that process out completely, and anybody in a town of 80,000 or less would be able to start a land bank. And this includes towns the size of Jefferson City, Joplin even, or Poplar Bluff, or even Fort Leonard Wood. There's a little towns around that area. So this would allow those cities and towns to start their own land bank to see how they can best help their own communities. There are two links at the bottom of the slideshow presentation, and I'm going to see if Nichelle can add those into our chat. This allows you to see who your individual House or representative or House or senator is in Missouri, and so then who you would directly talk to about why you think land banks are important. And currently, this bill in question is in the perfection stage, so it really can be heard anytime in the House. Thank you, Sarah. She's putting that in the chat for you guys. This can really be heard at any time. So that's why, really, for us, it's super important right now to take that action. To thank you, Nichelle. Yes, everybody will receive a recording and all the links that we shared. So really, we do think this is something that is important, and we want you to do right now and take action on it, as we're ending our discussion here today. So does anybody have any questions that I can answer in the chat?
I am accessing this via my phone, but I'm curious which bill, it may be on the PowerPoint slides that I can't see, but I'm curious which bill you're referring to, or like the bill number.
HB 2177.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I have a question about that. That's come up a lot here in Columbia, and they talk about a lot of those houses that are abandoned. The person died without a will or an heir. Can a land bank do something about those type of situations where would that give the city more power to do something with that?
Yes, really, and that's exactly what it does, is it gives that city or township the power to do something about those properties that are just sitting vacant at this point, because they weren't in anybody's well. So yeah, that's a good question, Kelly.
Kelly, I was just going to hop in really quickly too and share that this specific bill doesn't set up the parameters for what the land bank, how it operates, right? So community members can still say, like, we want a land bank, but we also want them to work to find if there's a next of kin or something like that in that type of situation where maybe like it was just a paperwork issue and that's why the property didn't get handed down. They want to work with those types of families, the owners, and return it back to those households. There's lots of ways that the land bank can operate and ensure that generational wealth gets passed down if it's possible to do so. Otherwise, those houses just sit there forever until they're condemned, which is a real waste.
And really, that just costs the city that much more money to condemn it and it ultimately demolish it. All right, anybody have any other questions or comments?
Do we have on that bill, is Empower Missouri statement about it out there somewhere that we can kind of use to help us with our contacting our legislators?
That was a good question. Sarah, would they find that information on our website? I don't know if we've made a statement per se.
We did. We offered testimony and support. It should be attached to the bill. All we're asking today is if you'll reach out to your lawmakers and say that you think, especially House Bill 2177, and ask that it be passed this year.
Okay.
But if you did want more detailed information, like Sarah said, you can find that attached to the bill.
Okay.
Thank you. That was a good question. All right, I'm going to check the chat here just to make sure I didn't miss anything. I don't believe so. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you guys to do today, like I said, is contact that lawmaker, contact the person who is from your district and tell them how important this is to you and to our fellow neighbors here in Missouri. And oftentimes you may be speaking to a staffer, but that is absolutely okay, and they will pass that information along to the senator or representative. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay on this call for a few more minutes here. And if anybody has any questions about how to contact their individual legislator, they can ask in the chat, or they can just speak up and we can get you to the information that you need in order to take this action that we're asking of you guys today. And then if you guys do get to talk to your individual legislator, go ahead and come back and let us know how it went. Like I said, you can email me let our team know, because we really love to hear those stories about how discussions went, because we know that they can be a little intimidating for sure. But as Christine put it, they possibly can't know everything. So it is up to individual citizens to go to them and really express what they're thinking and feeling is important in Missouri, especially around affordable housing. And for us, that is HB 2177, which involves land banks.